Before we get into this episode, there's something that might be of interest that I wanted to tell you about. Scene and Herd, who run this podcast, have been asked by Scotland Food and Drink to undertake a strategic review of the Scotland Food and Drink Excellence Awards. Now, these Excellence Awards have been going for almost 20 years and are a huge mainstay of the food and drink sector. But it's time to ensure that they're still relevant. So if you have ever been involved in the Scotland Food and Drink Excellence Awards, or even if you've ever had an opinion about them, we would love for you, please, to complete our survey. So if you go to the On Farm Twitter, which is at on_farm UK, and click the link in the bio, there will be a tab in there that will take you to the survey, and it should only take you a very short while to complete, but we would be enormously grateful. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the On Farm podcast. I'm Anna, and whilst I'm with you just now, I was not the lucky person who had the pleasure of going to visit our next guests. Producer Dave took a trip quite recently up to Spean Bridge, and he spent the day with Paolo and Elspeth Berardelli. Now, I'm particularly interested in this episode because Elspeth is actually my husband's cousin. So I visited the Great Glen Cattle Ranch where they live in the past. But I didn't realise until listening to this episode the huge variety of activities that they have going on the farm. Now, sheep is obviously a big thing for them up there in the mountains. But they also are involved with a lot of stalking. They have renewable energy. They've got a few pets as well as the commercial animals, so you'll hear from a goat at some point in the episode. And Elspeth has just started a new venture which is all about bringing disadvantaged children onto the farm and effectively seeing them flourish as a result of all of the wonderful activities that they take part in. So I think you'll enjoy hearing from them because their story is fabulous and it's fascinating to hear all of the things that they get up to.
This is Gino the goat, and this is this year's pet lambs. They're actually doing really well. You're good lambs, aren't you?
I think we should start from the beginning, guys. If we can get you to sort of just introduce yourselves first of all. So kind of name, rank and serial number, I guess. My name is and I am.
Yeah, I'm Paolo Berardelli. I came to the cattle ranch here in Spean Bridge in the Great Glen when I was about 14 years old. And grew up here basically, moved away for a while, but in our 30s, me and my wife Elspeth came back and had most of our 5 children here. Together we run the Great Glen Cattle Ranch. We run a sheep, sort of mountain sheep farm down in Glencoe, and some land where we do some deer stalking at Loch Islet.
That's brilliant. You've introduced Elspeth too, but we'll let her say hello. Anything to add?
Hi, so I'm Elspeth. As Paolo said, we've been here for the last 20 years farming together, bringing up her 5 children here. Latterly, they have dispersed to various corners of the world, so it's Paolo and I and our one remaining child, and I seem to have just filled the void with animals and other people's children that I bring onto the farm for a little bit of farm therapy and outdoor experiences.
Where we are here now at the cattle ranch, at one time it used to be part of Inverlochy Estate. So Inverlochy Estate stretched out all the way from Fort William. The northern boundary would have been the river, the Lochie River, and going south the boundary would basically be right into Kinlochleven. So the Ben Nevis, Anachmore where the skiing is, the Grey Corries, the Moors near Kinlochleven, they were all part of the Inverlochy estate. The bulk of it is still owned by, well, what was British Aluminium, that obviously got the smelter in Fort William, and they used the hydropower from the area. It's now owned by Jahama. They run it mostly. There's no livestock on it anymore, or very little. There's some sheep close to Ben Nevis and Glen Nevis, but the rest of it's all just basically a one big stalking estate. And our part of it, the cattle ranch, was split off in the 50s basically, and Inverlochy Castle Hotel has been split off. So yeah, it's all been, the bulk of it's still together, and obviously the bend now is owned by the John Muir Trust.
Because actually, you are very much in the heart of picture book Scotland here, aren't you?
Absolutely.
I mean, on one level, it is very, very beautiful, but also it's getting on towards winter as we're speaking now. It might be closer to winter by the time this piece gets aired.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's pretty wild sometimes too.
I mean, we're quite close to sea, so we don't really get a lot of snow low down unless we get an east wind. But obviously the hills, there's plenty of snow on the hills and pretty rough weather.
There's a very friendly goat that we'll get onto.
Yeah, I think I might have to feed this goat.
Okay. Why don't we let Elspeth get the goat fed and make sure, because actually he's quite keen to eat my microphone cable at the moment, which is not what we want. So while she keeps the animals occupied, Paolo, you've got a few different enterprises here.
Yeah.
You've got quite a lot of different things going on.
Yeah.
Just talk us through. I mean,
so I guess the priority is to try and keep the land that we've got working for us, keep employment, which I think is really important, just to keep people on the land. For example, Glencoe, the type of land we farm there, generally the sheep have gone off that ground, that type of ground, just because of the difficulty in managing that type of ground, because of its steepness and exposure, the elements and stuff. So we're reasonably lucky down in Glencoe. We've got 2 triple SIs down there for species-rich Nardis. So it's a special alpine type of habitat that's situated where water coming down a burn creates an alluvial fan at the bottom of the burn. That sort of green splay that you get at the bottom of the burn, where all the nutrients come down the burn and are splayed over. And that's where the species-rich Nardis is. Now, it needs a level of grazing. It doesn't need to be overgrazed by sheep, but it doesn't need to be undergrazed. If it's undergrazed, it would get too rank. So basically, the government, through AICS schemes, pay us basically to manage that habitat by keeping the sheep on there. Okay, so it's a wild kind of place. It's quite low lambing percentages. You're 65-70% lambing, but generally it's the extra subsidy that we get that are keeping the sheep on there basically. But at the end of the day, we're producing obviously lamb and stuff, but we're doing a job for the nation. We're managing that sensitive, important habitat for the nation. Like if the sheep went from the hill, the deer wouldn't do the same job as the sheep. It really has to be the sheep, And you're talking about sites that there's only 10 or 12 of those sites in Scotland like that. So it's a really important site. I mean, Glencoe has got a status for special area of conservation. And the only reason it's got that status is because of that triple SIs.
So that's one string to your bow.
Yeah.
We're also on what's called
farm,
the Great Glen Cattle Ranch here,
right,
which is something else entirely that you do here.
Yeah, so this is the main farm here now that we live on, that we were basically base ourselves at. So Glencoe is organic, been organic since 1999. We've been organic here since 2005 and run, a relatively extensive low input, hopefully not too low output type of farming. And we have, down in Glencoe, we have about 1,000 ewes, blackface ewes. Here we have about 400 blackface ewes, and we have 100 Galloway cows that are all outwintered and calve in the spring. We sell the calves in the autumn, early autumn, and we cross the Galloways with a white shorthorn bull to produce the blue-grey heifers that we sell for breeding. And all the livestock goes to other organic farms, either for breeding or for growing on and finishing, basically.
Just that name, Great Glen Cattle Ranch, I just think that conjures really interesting images in people's minds. And it's a name with a story behind it, right?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. So it was Mr. Hobbs that bought the land in the 50s. He was a distillery owner, in Fort William.
A Canadian, is that right?
He was Canadian, that's right. He owned various distilleries, one in Fort William, and he saw that the land was for sale, and it reminded him very much of the land back in Canada where he grew up. And it was just after the war, so there was a big push to increase production, increase the productivity of the land. There was no cattle at the time. It was only a few sheep. Well, some cattle, but mostly sheep. Some milking cows, but mostly sheep. So he bought the land, and with help from the government, if you like, to transform it into a cattle ranch, it could be a blueprint for other land in Scotland. So a lot of people you speak to, actually, of our generation, have actually been to the ranch, because as you know, they came for farm visits when they were in their 20s, young farmers or whatever.
So it was like an example for others to follow.
Yeah, no, definitely, yeah. But he was a very smart guy. He owned the lime quarry just over the road, so he used to get paid by the government to spread his own lime on his own land. So yeah, he was quite a shrewd guy. But he had over 1,000 cows on the place. It was a lot bigger in them days. It was 10,000 acres. We run about 2,000 acres now. But obviously the name stuck, and everybody knows it as the ranch or the cattle ranch or whatever. So yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure we've covered all this off. So we've talked about the sheep over at Glencoe and the the cattle ranching here.
Uh-huh.
There's you've been stalking recently with visitors from America.
That's right. We just do 2 weeks of stag stalking. So we have about 4,500 acres near Arisaig, near Lochilot, and basically we have American, some English and Scottish clients, but mostly Americans that come for a week at a time, and we take them out. We guide them out stalking basically, and shoot stags with them. We guide them and they shoot the stag, but we're taking them out basically. So,
and that's just finished now. How's that gone?
Yeah, it went really well. Yeah. No, we had 12 Americans came, and they wanted 2 stags each, and that's exactly what they got. So everybody, with a day to spare, actually, they had 1 day off, so that was good. So it's quite an intense week, looking after all these guys, but it's good fun as well. We have some dinners together at night, and with all the boys and that work that help me doing the stalking, the gillies and the stalkers, and they come. It's not for them. It's not just about the shot. It's about being out in the hill, walking. It's quite steep ground. There's no mechanical way really of getting up the hill. It's all on foot, and they appreciate that. They appreciate the skill of the stalker to get them on a beast. They love the scenery. Yeah, just and they come back every year. They're coming back now for 25 years, so with different people, but the main guy has been coming back for a long time. So
agri-tourism is quite a trendy word just now, but that's effectively what you've been doing here for 2 decades or more,
that's
actually.
Right. Yeah. We've got some renewable energy as well. We've got 50 kilowatt hydro that goes in the grid, and that's been doing very, very well. And we've got a very small one here, a 6 kilowatt, that basically provides the houses with power when it's raining, obviously. And we have a biomass plant here as well that provides heat for the 2 houses on the farm. So, yeah, and comms masts, we've got quite strategic locations for communication masts, for mobile phone masts. So that's another source of income as well. So, yeah, we basically use the land, very much our land is our asset, and we try and use it to the best of our advantage,
It's really interesting hearing you speak, because that is a wide spread of different things that you're up to, and I think it needs to be, right?
Absolutely.
If one thing's not working out, something else might fill the gap.
100%. You need to have a lot of different things going on parallel to each other. For example, the communication masts now, the government have put in a new law that gives the communication guys a lot more power. So the rents have drastically reduced in that. The income from them has gone down to basically 20% of what it was. But the hydro is doing nearly double. because of the price of power is so expensive, it's doing over double what it was doing 5 years ago. So, but you need all these things to one'll do well and the other one won't do so well.
It's a juggling act. It's a juggling act. And Elspeth isn't making life any easier, because Elspeth, we're just going to walk over here. Come over too, Paolo. Rather. So Elspeth, you're standing here as well, waiting patiently to be spoken to, because all of that's going on the farm, and you're trying to get something new running as well, almost a sort of a social work project.
I suppose it could be described as that. I think the thing that Paolo maybe hasn't yet brought out was how much of a family farm this is. And our children have been involved from as soon as they could walk, probably even prior to them walking, they'd be out in prams, in the middle of the sheep shed or whatever. And I think recently it's just begun to dawn on me what privilege that is. They have life skills and resilience that I think is maybe lacking now, particularly post-COVID. So it's been several years of something working away inside me, wanting to share, wanting to give back, wanting to share that privilege that our kids have had. And it's just, I actually did a wilderness therapy course a couple of years ago.
A wilderness therapy course?
Yeah, which...
What's one of those?
Well, it seems a little bit illogical in that it involved me driving 8 hours down to Cheshire to then find a bit of wilderness, but that's what was involved. And we did...
Did you tell them you've got plenty here?
Yeah, well, I did offer some of our wilderness, but they wanted civilised wilderness, perhaps? Accessible wilderness, maybe that. And it was fascinating. We did psychology in the morning, and in the afternoons we went out into the woods, sat around fires, and just learned the beauty of just being. In an environment, it was really still. We had whittling knives or whatever, and the chat and you just see people easing and beginning to breathe, and it really, really resonated. So that probably started me focused this journey, and then I got a grant to set up what I called a space to be, maybe for want of any other description, but...
Space to Be is the name of the project?
Yes, yep. It is. I got funding through, it was called the Ideas Fund, and they wanted some research on the back of it as well, so I got together with what's now CAMS, the psychiatrist, one of the psychiatrists in CAMS. And so
CAMS is the Children and Adolescents Mental Health Support Service, isn't
it?
Yeah.
Exactly. Who at the moment are absolutely inundated, particularly post-COVID. There's a real need, an awful lot of children that are really struggling, particularly with mainstream education, socialising, anxiety, that kind of thing. So we had a pilot group of children. I spoke to the school, we liaised with the school, and they decided that they would select 10 children that they really felt were struggling. And they chose a group of first years as a pilot group. And after coming here for 10 weeks, it was unbelievable, the transformation in those kids, And all we did, we went into the wood, we sat around the fire, we chatted. I wanted to try and give them ownership as well. So that's one side of it. And then, slightly self-indulgent, I seem to have collected 5 disparate animals round about me as well. So we have... What's
Paolo got to say about that? You've got a theory about that, Paolo.
Well, they just get this little field and they're not allowed out of it, basically. It's fine as long as they stay here.
It's the children, many of the 5 children have flown the nest, and you're looking to fill the gap.
It's purely coincidental that there's 5 animals, okay? But I mean, look, so the donkeys in particular, they're really incredible therapy animals. I mean, you just feel you can tell them anything. They're beautiful, they're gentle, and they were rescue animals themselves. They were rescued from a railway line down in the Lake District, and it's a mother and daughter who had gotten foal as a quite young mum, and they were looking for a new home. So I think they found their forever home now.
Paolo, I know that in the past you have spoken about your own experiences with mental health.
Yeah.
And you've considered it to be important to do so.
Yeah.
Must be quite good from that perspective to see this sort of positive action taking place right here on your farm.
Yeah, no, very much so. I mean, it's has been a bit of a taboo thing in the past, obviously, and people are talking a lot more about it. So, I mean, I did an interview for the Scottish Farmer about my bipolar mental health problem. Well, I suppose it is a problem.
Condition, maybe.
Condition.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like when I'm feeling good and I can take on a lot of stuff, it's obviously a very positive thing. When I'm feeling down, it's a negative thing. But anyway, I'm kind of dealing with it, and I thought it was important to talk about it if it helped other people. And it was amazing. I was just unbelievably thrown back by the amount of people that sent me cards, sent me messages, called me on the phone. People I didn't really know, sort of knew a bit, but they were having problems, and they were just really glad that I talked about it. So they were telling me how they were trying to deal with it and taking my advice, going to the doctor, whatever. So that was really good. And then sort of Elspeth starting to do this with the kids, and I can see the kids that come here that have been coming here for a year, and there's a huge difference when they start they just won't even no eye contact, they're looking down, and no confidence, no self-esteem, no resilience, no nothing, and Elspeth works with them for a while, and they start chatting and talking to you, and yeah, after a few months you can really see a big difference in them. So yeah, very proud of what she's doing. And I mean, I help out a wee bit with it and help her with the space and try and get that, we made a wee path in there for her and a wee hut and stuff. So, and some of the kids come with me in the tractor or doing what I'm doing as well. So I try and help out when I can.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I feel, I do the bulk of the legwork and whatever, and then Paolo will roll up in the tractor and it's, can we go with Paolo? He's like a god. The grumpier, the better.
You've got to live up to the stereotype, Paolo. Is that what it is?
He does that very, very well. I think what hit me too was the irony of being in, Lochaber, outdoor capital of Britain, and yet it's not accessible to so many people. And I think previously we have a child who has mobility issues, and I saw accessibility maybe as a physical thing, and I now realise it's not. Mentally, it's a huge thing to be brave enough to access the outdoors or to understand how to use the outdoors.
Just to know what to do and how to be, maybe sometimes.
I think, like I said, the things that we just took for granted that we've always encouraged in our children. And, we've probably been there's been a lot of tough love. We put them out in cold weather and you'll be fine, put your wellies on and whatever. And I think that's maybe missing nowadays in some upbringings just because of the way that society's altered. So it's humbling every day to see the impact of something so simple. I wanted to introduce you to my chickens. I think I mentioned that I tried to give the children that come to the farm a bit of ownership. So we incubated an egg each. They all picked up one egg, we put them in the incubator, and 3 weeks later we hatched the most random group of chickens I think I've ever had. And I just feel it reflects the whole inclusion of what we're doing. And they come back, and actually this particular one, this is Charles. So they come back and they know their chickens, and they call them by name and they lift them up. And I just think it's a really brilliant example of the diversity. Oh, we've got the dogs now too.
Bye, chickens.
It doesn't. What is it? Animals and children. Well, we do both in extreme. I think we'll leave them feeding here, and I'll show you into the wood as well if you'd like to.
But that's lovely. Each one of these chickens has been raised from an egg by one of the kids that you have on the farm to help them kind of grow in confidence and kind of...
Well, just have a bit of ownership, every time they... I mean, obviously there's a limit to that. We can't, we have groups through every 12 weeks. We can't...
Yeah, you'd be a battery farm
yeah,
before you knew where you were.
We're going to have to find an outlet, perhaps, to keep doing it. But certainly for the first group, it was just another really definitive moment. Very exciting for them. And hands-on. A lot of people don't even realise how a chicken comes into being.
Hello, doggies.
Right, we're going to
These are all our son's dogs that he uses for...
They look like proper working dogs.
Being a contract shepherd, but then he goes to New Zealand and he leaves me to look after them all. So, well, there's 4 more that he's actually farmed out to other people, so we've only got half of them, thankfully, but yeah.
He sounds like he's got quite the lifestyle. swapping hemispheres every 2 seasons.
Shearing and drinking beer. Well, at least he's not just drinking beer. At least he's doing some work.
So this time of year, he's in where? New Zealand?
He's just left for New Zealand, and they'll start shearing more or less straight away, and that'll take him through to about February, I think, and he comes back, and he's got a few lambing jobs. I think one in Aberdeenshire and one somewhere else, and then he comes back to this area in Skye and north of Scotland, and he shears and gathers sheep every day, just on a day-to-day basis, really.
There's a very excited dog. Where are we going? What are we doing?
They don't get in here very much.
Say again?
They don't get in here very much. This is my domain. So this actually started off as a goat wood.
It was a rough, wet field, basically, that in the 80s we made use of the grants at the time to plant little areas of natural woodland. So
it's a bit of woodland that we've looked out on for 15 years and just saw it as a dark, boggy wood. And then I got some...
A bit of a nuisance, maybe.
Well, it was. Yeah. Well, then I got the goats, so equally a bit of a nuisance. So Paolo said, right, you can have that woodland for your goats. So that's how it started. I put my goats in here, and then they started ring barking all the trees. So they were gradually killing the wood. So they got sent back to another field, and I saw the opportunity to develop it as something else. So this is where the project is supposed to be really started, and this was the woodland that I got the grant for, and this is where my vision kind of started. And it was the area that I was going to provide for them, that they could then come and just hang out. And you see them beginning to gain confidence. Some of them come, they're almost mute, they're so scared to speak, and by the end they're giggling and laughing and forming friendships that have continued, back into their school life again, which is incredible.
Yeah, because they might not feel able within school to kind of make the friendships with other people in another gang or another tribe that they could make here, where they're maybe more on an equal footing, have more commonality.
Well, absolutely. I think, when children, particularly when they first go into high school, there's a whole hierarchical thing, and it's all about being cool and doing the right thing and wearing the right clothes. You come here and that takes away all of that.
The right clothes are wellies, it turns
exactly.
out. Yeah.
If you haven't got your wellies on, you're definitely not cool. So it's very, very simple. I put in a meandering path, and there was already the hut there. That was the hut that we actually built for the goats, which was clearly always too good for the goats anyway. So we can.
I've seen glamping places that are less hospitable. The other thing I noticed about the path we're on is that it's very wide. The accessibility is something that you've got in mind, haven't you, at all times? Absolutely,
and I still feel I've got a long way to go with that. So yeah, the path is very accessible. The hut is very accessible. I haven't managed to get a fully accessible loo. We've got a little outdoor composting loo, but it's not wheelchair accessible. I'm constantly looking for different streams of funding to advance particularly that part of it, the physical accessible part. This tiny little pond was a very fundamental part of this group. So this was week 3, and we had a girl who was very, very into frogs. And we found some tadpoles in a puddle that were drying out. So I said, right, let's rescue those tadpoles. And we got wheelbarrows for the water. We just thought we'd put a bit of amusement into it as well. And so we had a digging team, a barrowing with water team, and a stone collecting team. And in 2 hours we created this pond. And again, it's giving it back to them. It's their pond, and they come and they check, and they watch the tadpoles grow, and it's so simple. And yet it absolutely gelled that group. From then on there was a unity that hadn't been there to begin with. I know you forget that we're not very far from the main roads at all, and yet it's a haven, isn't it? It's so tranquil, and it's hard with groups of kids, but I'm always trying to get a bit of mindfulness into them, even to get them to be quiet for 2 minutes. And it's incredible, be quiet for 2 minutes and list the things that you can hear. And I think that they're gradually beginning to appreciate it. And then I can just hear the chewing of my jammy dodger or something like, this.
My snotty nose. Yeah. There's this quite trendy concept of forest bathing, isn't there? Where you go out and take time in the woods and just be, right?
Well, I suppose that's kind of where I was coming from, but what I really realise, and that's how I'm operating the project, is to not have an agenda is a really valuable thing. Especially for children with anxiety, or
to not be rushing, to be rushed,
and to do what they want. So, I usually will have a choice of things, and obviously, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? Or do you just want to go for a walk? And quite often, that's what they choose. They just want to walk. We had lots of the river was in a big spate last week, and we just wandered around the edge of the river, looked into the river, threw some sticks in, looked at how the currents were working. It's very, very simple things. I don't know if you noticed too that the path, I love the way the path meanders. And that was our first point of conflict. You can imagine Paolo the farmer. So the hut's there, the gate's there. What on earth is this about? This path is 3 times as long as it needs to be.
You're not getting it, Paolo. You're not getting it.
I get it now.
It's just really nice. You see these kids, they come in that gate and then they're liberated. They can do whatever they want. They run up the path and, we have a bit of a routine. We light the fire. I'll come in and I'll show you where we sit around the fire.
I just love listening to you because you're so enthusiastic about this project. Like I can just hear it in your voice.
I think it's been in me for so long, and I was really scared. It's maybe like committing to running a marathon or something. Once I applied for that grant and then got it, it was like, oh my gosh, I really have to do this thing. And then with the first pilot group being so successful, just ticking every box in increased well-being. I don't know what's the right word actually. Resilience is a word that always comes out, and I think that maybe is realising that it's okay to be wet. It's okay to get into the bog. It's okay to feel a bit of discomfort, and I think that's something that they gain a lot from learning. So this was the original Too Good for the Goats hut.
So we've reached the end of the windy path, and here we are at the hut, and you're right, it is too good for goats. And then out here we've got some just very simple logs for seating, and a brazier, like a burner.
Yeah, so we actually have 2 alternative fires. This one, it's funny, this seems to be more, I hate using the word therapy, I don't know what the right word is, but this one lad comes and we light the fire. He and sometimes it is a therapist or whoever, they come and sit and just chat, and there's an ambience that it creates that is very, very relaxing. So this is more kind of one-to-one one, and then the groups we set this up in a circle, we get the fire going, we get the hot chocolate, that's always a big pull as well.
And this is all stuff that some kids might do with scouts or something, isn't it? But I guess you're opening it up to people who might not volunteer for things like that straightforwardly.
And I think again, it's the lack of agenda. So even with scouts or whatever, you come to earn a badge or you do something, whereas here you don't have to do anything, or you can. We do different crafts. We've done weaving and different things with plants. And when you see them all, they sit round here the first week. And there'll be 2 there, there'll be 1 there. They're very much in their tiny little cliques. And by 2nd, 3rd week, you get the hot chocolate going, and there's banter going round. And one thing I do, I've given them all little name plaques, and this is our name board. And
it's a wooden pallet.
It could be that's one way of describing it.
It started life as a wooden pallet.
Wooden pallet with some nails in it, and they write their name. They're just little bits of wood. And I always make a big thing of putting the name up. So sometimes it's, put the name up and tell me your favourite animal. Or another week it might...
Oh, nice.
So just so there's a bit of connection between each other. So they're thinking, oh, this is Fred.
And his favourite animal is...
Oh, he likes a wolf. Oh my!
I like wolves too,
they probably didn't even know anything about Fred. They'd probably never even heard Fred
speak,
exactly. Or another thing I do, which is it's just silly little things. You have the names in a bag, and I get them to draw the name out, and then they have to give the name to the person. So it's just encouraging very, very simple, non-complicated communication between them. There's one very nice craft that involves you just get 2 bits of fabric, You pick up some plants, you put another bit of fabric on top, and then you get a stone and you beat it down, and you make these wonderful, maybe like the symmetrical butterfly kind of designs. And it's so simple, nobody can get that wrong. And also if you've got inner frustrations, it's quite nice to just bang down hard. So that's been really successful.
Is the fear of getting things wrong something that this generation you've got cold hands after doing that, the generation you're talking about might struggle with, actually?
I think it is. I think that there's just such huge, there's just an awful lot of pressure on them to achieve all the time. And definitely COVID has made a difference. And maybe it's that thing in COVID. I think we're all a bit guilty. We realised that you can get out of things. I'm very much a person, if you've said you're going to do something, then you commit to it and you do it. But COVID, there was so often that things that you thought you were going to do were cancelled. And I think maybe that's a psyche that's kind of gone through all of us now. Oh, well, maybe I don't need to bother. And to some extent that's good. There's no pressure, but maybe you need to commit as well.
You might miss out on something wonderful if you don't grasp opportunities when they come. It's been really special to come here and to hear about your vision. Thank you very much for sharing it.
That's okay. I don't know where it's going. It just seems to be growing constantly. And Paolo's like, this is your limit. And then I might sneak another little bit of woodland. There's so many lovely little pockets of. I think when you see it grow, the potential just carries on. Elderly people who are maybe become a bit isolated, it'd be lovely for them to come and
It's quite funny because in doing these on-farm episodes, you hear that quite a lot. The kind of tension almost between the farming couples. The husband or whatever thinks that there's a way of doing things, and the wife or partner thinks that there's another way of doing things, and it's about navigating the relationship sometimes. I
do wonder if the farmer, it's all about the business, and I think they're maybe just slightly scared of appearing soft. I think, as I say, we normally, we'll come to a compromise that is usually in my favour, and I think, he said he sees the benefit.
He says one thing, I say another, and we compromise by doing what I want.
That's a very good summation. I think he appreciates the value of it as well, to be fair, don't you? Yeah.
Well, let's bring him back in because Paolo's just been off taking a phone call, but we're just wrapping up and just hearing from Elspeth about this wonderful project in this particular corner of the field. But thinking back about the whole of the conversation that we've had, the real sense that I get is so many irons and so many fires, and it's all about thinking about the next thing, the next way to make this land work for you, to give you a living and to give you a life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, we've been very lucky that my father, used to be a chemical engineer, and he grew a business and sold it, and used that money to come to Scotland and buy land because he loved it. And we're really privileged that we're his legacy, that we're here because he came here, he bought the land. But it's got to work for you. It's our only way of making income, basically, and we've got to look at all aspects of it to try and generate income from it and keep people employed, keep people coming here. Yep,
making income, but also with Elspeth's project, more so maybe making life a bit better for people as well.
Absolutely.
Well, it's just that
sharing it with people. Yeah,
sharing it. Yep.
It's a privilege to live and work where we do. And we're really, really aware of that. And I think the more people that we bring onto the farm and see their enthusiasm, it just verifies that, that we're really, really privileged. And yes, it's hard work, but the qualities it gives you way outweigh that, I think, anyway.
I've really enjoyed speaking to you both. I know that you are trying to get away and get packed for a trip, so we'll stop there, we'll call it to a halt, and I'll say thank you very much for taking time out of what was already a busy day to speak to me. Thank you, Paolo.
Absolute pleasure, David. Absolute pleasure.
And thank you, Elspeth.
Very nice to meet you. Thanks, David.
So thank you to Paolo and to Elspeth. I really enjoyed that, and I hope that you did too. Thank you to Dave for taking the trip up there to meet with them. And as ever, thank you to our sponsors. So Gillespie McAndrew, thank you once again for your support of the On Farm podcast. We could not produce these podcasts without the support of our sponsors. So thank you to Gillespie McAndrew. And that's us for this week. We will be back again next week, and see you then.